What happens when a casual morning show interview turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? What happens when America's sweetheart reaches her breaking point live on air, and the cameras capture every single second of it? This is the story of how Valerie Bertinelli walked off the Today Show set, leaving Hoda Kotb speechless and millions of viewers absolutely stunned. Before we get into what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think really caused this whole situation to explode the way it did. Now let's get into it. The interview started like any other. Valerie Bertinelli walked onto the Today Show set with that familiar warm smile viewers have loved for decades. Hoda Kotb greeted her with open arms, and the two exchanged pleasantries as Valerie settled into the guest chair. The energy in the studio felt light, comfortable even. Nobody could have predicted what was about to unfold. Hoda kicked things off with what seemed like an easy question. "Valerie, it's so good to have you here. You've been on quite a journey lately, and I think a lot of people have been following your story. How are you doing?" "Really?" Valerie's smile remained, but something flickered across her face. "I'm doing well, Hoda. I'm in a really good place. Actually, I've been focusing on myself, on my happiness, and on what matters most to me." Hoda nodded enthusiastically. "That's wonderful to hear. Now, you've been very open on social media about your personal life, about your experiences. Some people have said you're over. What do you say to that?" The shift was subtle but noticeable. Valerie's posture changed slightly. "Well, Hoda, I think that's an interesting word. I'm sharing my truth. I'm sharing my experiences as a woman navigating life. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, maybe that says more about them than it does about me." Hoda laughed, but it sounded forced. Sure, but you have to admit, some of the things you've posted have been pretty personal. The videos about your divorce, the comments about your ex-husband, even some of the things about your body image struggles. Don't you think there's a line between authenticity and perhaps, I don't know, airing dirty laundry?" Valerie's jaw tightened. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Airing dirty laundry?" No, I'm just saying what some people have commented." Hoda backtracked quickly. "I'm asking the questions that viewers want answered, right? Because viewers want to see women torn down for being honest." Valerie replied, her voice remaining controlled, but noticeably cooler. "Here's the thing, Hoda. For years, decades actually, I played by the rules. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I stayed quiet when I was supposed to stay quiet. I pretended everything was perfect, even when it wasn't. And you know what that got me? It got me anxiety, depression, and a life where I didn't even recognize myself anymore." Hoda tried to interject. "Valerie, I think you're misunderstanding what I'm asking." "Am I though?" Valerie leaned forward slightly. "Because it seems pretty clear to me. You're asking why I'm choosing to be honest about my life. You're questioning whether I have the right to share my own story on my own platform. And I have to wonder, would you be asking me these questions if I was a man?" The studio went quiet for a beat. Hoda's smile wavered. "That's not fair. This isn't about gender, isn't it though?" Valerie pressed. "When men talk about their struggles, their divorces, their journeys, they're called brave and vulnerable. When women do it, especially women over 50, we're told we're told we should be more dignified. We're told to keep our pain private." Hoda shifted in her seat. "I think you're putting words in my mouth. I'm simply trying to have a conversation about boundaries and what's appropriate to share publicly." "Appropriate, according to who?" Valerie's voice rose slightly. "According to you. According to some producer who decided this would make good television." "Let me ask you something, Hoda. When you went through your divorce, when you talked about it publicly, did anyone question whether you were being appropriate?" "That was different," Hoda said defensively. "How? How is it different?" "Because I wasn't posting videos every other day. I wasn't making comments about my ex. I handled it with grace." Valerie let out a sharp laugh. "Grace. There's that word again. Women are always supposed to have grace. We're supposed to suffer quietly, leave with grace, age with grace, disappear with grace. Well, maybe I'm tired of grace. Maybe grace is just another word for silence." Hoda tried to regain control of the interview. "Valerie, I really think we're getting off track here. I didn't bring you on the show to upset you. I brought you on because people love you, they support you, and yes, they have questions. Questions or judgments. Because from where I'm sitting, this feels a lot more like an interrogation than a conversation." "You're being very defensive," Hoda observed, her tone shifting to something almost clinical. "And you're being very aggressive." Valerie shot back. "Did you prepare these questions yourself, or did someone hand you a list designed to get exactly this reaction?" Hoda's face flushed. "That's completely unfair. I'm a professional. I've been doing this for years." "Then act like it," Valerie said quietly, but with an edge that cut through the studio. "Because right now, you're acting like every other person who wants to police how women express themselves. You want me to be palatable? You want me to be the Valerie that everyone remembers from television, the one who never rocked the boat, who always played nice. But that version of me was dying inside, Hoda. She was suffocating." "I'm not trying to police anything," Hoda protested. "I'm trying to understand." "No, you're trying to get a soundbite. You're trying to create a moment. And congratulations. You're getting one, just not the one you expected. The tension in the studio was palpable now. Crew members exchanged glances. Hoda took a deep breath, clearly trying to reset. Look, why don't we take a step back? Let's talk about your cookbook. Let's talk about the positive things you're working on. Valerie stared at her for a long moment. You want to pivot to the cookbook now? Valerie said slowly. You want to just pretend like the last 5 minutes didn't happen. Like you didn't just sit here and essentially tell me that my honesty is inappropriate. That's not what I said, Hoda insisted. Then what did you say? Because I'd love for you to clarify. Valerie crossed her arms. Actually, you know what? Let me guess how this usually works. You ask the uncomfortable questions, you get the guest flustered or upset. And then you smooth it over with something light and fluffy so everyone can go home feeling okay about what just happened. Is that about right? Hoda's expression hardened. You know, Valerie, I've interviewed hundreds of people on this show. Thousands, actually. And I've always prided myself on asking real questions, honest questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't have agreed to come on. Oh, there it is, Valerie said, nodding. There's the real Hoda. This is what I'm talking about. The moment a woman pushes back, the moment she refuses to just go along with the narrative, suddenly, she's the problem. Suddenly she can't handle it. You're twisting everything I'm saying, Hoda argued, her voice rising. I asked you legitimate questions about your very public persona and your very public comments. That's my job. Your job is also to treat your guests with respect. Your job is to create a space where people feel safe to share their stories. But instead, you came into this interview with an agenda. You wanted to question my choices, my decisions, my voice. And the worst part, you're doing it under the guise of concern. I am concerned, Hoda said firmly. As someone who has watched your career, who has admired you, I'm concerned when I see you posting things that seem angry, that seem bitter. Valerie laughed, but there was no humor in it. Bitter. Another word we love to use for women who refuse to stay silent. Here's what you see as bitter. Hoda, I see as honest. I see as liberation. For the first time in my life, I'm not pretending. I'm not performing. I'm just being me, messy and complicated and real. And if that makes people uncomfortable, if that makes you uncomfortable, that's not my problem to fix. But don't you think you have a responsibility? Hoda pressed. You have a platform. You have young women watching you. What kind of message does it send when you're constantly posting about your pain, your anger? What kind of message does it send when we tell women to hide their pain? Valerie countered immediately. What kind of message does it send when we say your struggles aren't worthy of being seen, that you should suffer in private so everyone else can feel comfortable? I'll tell you what kind of message that sends. It sends the message that women's experiences don't matter, that our pain should be decorative at best and invisible at worst. That's not what I'm saying at all, Hoda protested. Then, what are you saying? Because every single question you've asked me today has been about me being too much, too honest, too open, too raw. When does it become enough? Hoda, when do I get to just exist without being questioned about whether I'm doing it the right way? When you stop making everything so public, Hoda said, her patience clearly wearing thin. When you stop dragging other people into your narrative. Dragging other people? Valerie's voice went quiet again, which somehow felt more dangerous than when she was loud. Are you talking about my ex-husband? Because let me be very clear about something. I have never once named him in a negative post. I have never once told lies about him. I have shared my experience of what it's like to rebuild your life after a marriage ends. That's my story to tell. But he's in that story too, Hoda pointed out. He doesn't get a say. He had plenty of say for years, Valerie shot back. He had say in interviews, in statements, in his own narrative. And I stayed quiet. I took the high road. I let him control the story. But now I'm telling my side. And suddenly that's a problem. Suddenly, I'm the villain for having a voice. Nobody's calling you a villain, Hoda said, but her tone suggested otherwise. You don't have to use the word to communicate the meaning, Valerie replied. Every question you've asked today has been designed to paint me as someone who's out of control, who's oversharing, who's being inappropriate. You've taken my healing and tried to turn it into a character flaw. I've taken your very public behavior and asked you to explain it. That's journalism. No, that's judgment dressed up as journalism. And you know what the saddest part is? You're a woman, Hoda. You've been through your own struggles. You've had your own challenges. And yet, here you are, policing another woman's right to speak her truth. Why? Because it makes you uncomfortable. Because it doesn't fit into the neat little box of how women are supposed to behave. Hoda's face was flushed now. You don't get to tell me what kind of woman I am or what I should or shouldn't be asking. I'm doing my job. Your job shouldn't be tearing down other women. Your job shouldn't be making someone feel small for being authentic. And your authentic self is someone who posts cryptic videos and passive-aggressive comments. Hoda challenged. Come on, Valerie. You're not some young influencer figuring things out. You're a grown woman with decades in this industry. You know how this works. Exactly, Valerie said, her voice steady. I know exactly how this works. I know that the game is rigged. I know that no matter what I do, someone will have an opinion about whether I'm doing it right. Too quiet, I'm weak, too loud. I'm bitter, too happy. I'm fake to sad. I'm a victim. There's no winning. So I decided to stop playing. That's a very convenient way to avoid accountability, Hoda observed. Accountability for what? For living my life, for processing my emotions in public the same way millions of people do every single day on social media. Or is it just that when someone with a name does it, suddenly it becomes a spectacle that needs to be examined and criticized? When someone with your platform does it, yes, it deserves examination, Hoda maintained. You have influence. That comes with responsibility. And I'm being responsible by being real. I'm being responsible by showing other women, especially women my age, that it's okay to not have it all figured out. It's okay to be angry sometimes. It's okay to struggle, and to share that struggle. That's not irresponsible. That's human. Hoda shook her head slightly. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this. Of course we do, Valerie said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Because agreeing to disagree is what we do when we don't want to actually address the real issue. The real issue being that you invited me here under the pretense of a friendly interview, and instead, you ambushed me. Ambushed? Hoda looked genuinely offended. That's a bit dramatic, don't you think, is it? You brought me on this show knowing exactly what you wanted to ask. You had these questions locked and loaded. This wasn't about having a conversation with me. This was about putting me in the hot seat and watching me squirm. Well, I'm not squirming, Hoda. I'm standing my ground. And making yourself look unreasonable in the process, Hoda muttered, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up. Valerie froze. Excuse me? You heard me, Hoda said, not backing down now. You're being defensive, you're being hostile, and you're making this interview impossible to conduct. I'm making it impossible. Valerie's voice rose. You're the one who started this by questioning my character, my choices, my right to share my own story. But sure, let's blame me for being defensive when I'm literally defending myself. Nobody's attacking you, Hoda insisted. I asked you questions. That's what happens in interviews. People ask questions, and there are ways to ask questions. Valerie fired back. There are ways to approach sensitive topics with empathy and understanding, but you didn't do that. You came at me like I've done something wrong, like I owe you, or anyone else, an explanation for how I choose to live my life and process my experiences. When you put it out there for millions of people to see, yes, you kind of do owe an explanation, Hoda argued. That's the trade-off. You want the platform, you get the scrutiny. I don't want the platform for your approval, Valerie said sharply. I'm not posting for you. I'm not sharing for critics or for people who think they know better. I'm sharing because it helps me. It heals me. And if it happens to help other people who are going through similar things, that's a bonus. But I don't need your permission or your blessing to exist authentically. Then why did you come on the show? Hoda challenged. If you don't care what people think, if you don't want to explain yourself, why agree to this interview? Because I thought, foolishly, apparently, that I'd be talking to someone who understood. Someone who's been in this industry long enough to know how hard it is to be yourself. Someone who's faced her own challenges and could approach this conversation with compassion instead of contempt. I don't have contempt for you, Hoda said, but her tone suggested otherwise. You have contempt for my choices. You have contempt for my voice. And you know what? That's clear in every word you've said since I sat down in this chair. That's not true, Hoda protested weakly, isn't it? Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Would you be asking these questions if I was sitting here telling you everything was perfect? If I came on this show with a big smile, talking about how wonderful life is, how I've moved on, how everything happens for a reason, would you be interrogating me like this? Hoda hesitated. That's different. How is that different? Because that would be positive. That would be uplifting. This, what you're doing on social media, it's negative. It brings people down. Valerie stared at her in disbelief. So I'm supposed to lie. I'm supposed to pretend everything is sunshine and rainbows, just so other people feel comfortable. Do you have any idea how damaging that is? Do you know how many women suffer in silence because they think they're supposed to be positive all the time? Because they think their pain is too much, too heavy, too uncomfortable for others. I'm not saying you should lie, Hoda backtracked. I'm saying there's a balance. A balance, according to who? According to what standard? Who gets to decide how much pain is acceptable to share? Who gets to decide when authenticity crosses the line into you society? Random people on the internet who don't even know me. There are norms, Hoda said. There are social contracts about what we share publicly and what we keep private. And those norms were written by people who benefited from women staying silent. Valerie countered, those social contracts were designed to keep women small, to keep us manageable, to keep us from being too loud or too messy or too real. I'm done with those contracts, Hoda. I'm tearing them up. That's very poetic, Hoda said dryly. But in the real world, actions have consequences. Yes, they do. And one consequence of me being honest is that some people are uncomfortable. Another consequence is that some people feel seen and validated for the first time. I know which consequence matters more to me, even if it damages your reputation, even if it affects your career. My reputation with who? With people who think women should be silent. With people who want me to perform happiness, I don't want the approval of those people. And as for my career, I've had a long career, a successful career. And if speaking my truth means some doors close, then those weren't doors I wanted to walk through anyway. That's easy to say when you already have money and security, Hoda pointed out. What about the young women who look up to you? What about the message you're sending them about burning bridges? I'm not burning bridges, Valerie said firmly. I'm setting boundaries. I'm showing them that it's okay to prioritize your mental health over public perception. I'm showing them that you don't have to shrink yourself to make other people comfortable. And honestly, Hoda, if you can't see the value in that, if you can't understand why that matters, then this conversation is even more pointless than I thought. So now the conversation is pointless. Hoda's voice took on an edge. Maybe you should just leave then. Maybe this interview is over. Maybe it is, Valerie said quietly. Maybe it was over before it even began. The studio fell silent. Everyone could feel it. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Hoda's producer spoke urgently into her earpiece, but Hoda waved her off. You know what, Valerie? I think you came here looking for a fight, Hoda said. I think you wanted to be offended so you could play the victim. There it is, Valerie said, standing up slowly. The victim card. I was wondering when that would come out, because God forbid a woman stands up for herself without being accused of playing victim. God forbid she has boundaries without being called defensive. Sit down, Hoda said, her voice tense. We're not done here. Yes, we are, Valerie replied, reaching for her microphone pack. I'm done being interrogated. I'm done being judged. And I'm done pretending that this was ever anything other than an attempt to tear me down on national television. You're making a mistake, Hoda warned. Walking out in the middle of an interview, that's not a good look. Neither is bullying your guests, but here we are. Valerie began unhooking her microphone, her hands steady despite the charged atmosphere. The crew members looked at each other, unsure whether to intervene. Hoda sat frozen in her chair, clearly not expecting this turn of events. I'm not bullying you, Hoda said, her voice strained. I'm asking you questions that frankly, a lot of people want answers to. No, Valerie corrected, still working on removing her mic. You're asking questions designed to make me look bad. There's a difference. And I'm not going to sit here and let you do it, so you're just going to run away. Hoda challenged. That's your solution. When things get uncomfortable, you just leave. Valerie paused, the microphone packed now in her hand. She looked directly at Hoda with an expression that was equal parts disappointed and resolute. You know what, Hoda? I've spent too many years of my life in uncomfortable situations, staying when I should have left, smiling when I wanted to scream, playing nice when people were treating me poorly. I'm not doing that anymore. This isn't running away. This is choosing myself. Choosing yourself by throwing a tantrum on live television, Hoda muttered. Call it whatever you want, Valerie said, placing the microphone pack on her chair. I call it self-respect. I call it refusing to be treated as less than. I call it knowing my worth. Your worth. Hoda let out a sharp breath. Valerie, nobody is questioning your worth. I'm questioning your judgment. Same thing, Valerie replied. When you question how I choose to share my story, when you question my right to be honest about my experiences, you are questioning my worth. You're saying I don't have the right to take up space in the way I choose to take it up. That's not what I'm saying, Hoda insisted, standing up now to. You're twisting my words. I'm hearing what's behind your words. I'm hearing the judgment, the condescension, the barely veiled criticism, and I'm choosing not to subject myself to it anymore. So that's it. You're just going to walk out. What about our viewers? What about the people who tuned in to see you? What about them? Valerie asked pointedly. You think they're better served by watching me sit here and be attacked? You think that's good television? Maybe some people would enjoy that. Maybe some people would love to see me taken down a peg. But those aren't my people. Those aren't the people I care about reaching. This is incredibly unprofessional, Hoda said, her voice rising. You agreed to this interview. You have an obligation to see it through. I have an obligation to myself first, Valerie countered. And my obligation to myself is to not tolerate disrespect. Not anymore. Not from anyone. Disrespect, Hoda repeated, shaking her head. I've shown you nothing but respect. I've given you a platform to speak. A platform to speak, or a stage to be humiliated. Because from where I'm standing, this felt a lot more like the latter. You didn't invite me here to have a genuine conversation. You invited me here to justify myself, to explain myself, to defend myself. And I'm done doing that. Everyone has to answer tough questions sometimes, Hoda argued. That's life. That's part of being a public figure. There's a difference between tough questions and hostile questions. There's a difference between curiosity and contempt. And you crossed that line about 5 minutes into this interview. Hoda's jaw clenched. So I'm the bad guy now. I'm the villain in your story. You're the person who chose to use this platform to tear down another woman instead of lift her up. Valerie said simply. What you do with that information is up to you. I was trying to have an honest conversation, Hoda protested, her voice carrying a note of desperation now. No, you were trying to prove a point. You were trying to show that I'm out of control, that I'm oversharing, that I'm doing something wrong. Mission accomplished. You got your moment, but you don't get to keep me here for it. The producers were frantically signaling now, trying to get Hoda's attention, trying to salvage what was left of the interview. But both women were locked in this moment, neither willing to back down. If you walk out of here, Hoda said slowly, this is what people will remember. Not your cookbook, not your message, not anything you wanted to promote. Just this, just you walking away. Then that's what they'll remember, Valerie said with a calm that seemed almost eerie after the heated exchange. And maybe that's exactly what needs to be remembered. Maybe women need to see that it's okay to walk away from situations that don't serve them. Maybe they need to see that you don't have to sit there and take it just because someone has a camera pointed at you. You're being ridiculous, Hoda said, frustration evident in every word. And you're being cruel, Valerie replied. Maybe not intentionally, but the impact is the same. You invited me here. You asked me invasive questions. You judged my choices. And now you're angry that I'm not just accepting it with a smile. Well, I'm out of smiles, Hoda, at least for this. Fine, Hoda said, sitting back down heavily in her chair. Go, leave, but don't expect to be invited back. Valerie actually smiled at that, a real smile for the first time since the interview began. I wouldn't come back if you begged me. This show, this interview, this whole experience has just confirmed everything I already knew. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. It's designed to keep women in line, to punish us when we step out of bounds, to make examples of us when we refuse to play by rules we never agreed to. Now you're being dramatic, Hoda said dismissively. Maybe, Valerie acknowledged. Or maybe I'm being clear. Maybe I'm being honest. Maybe I'm being exactly what you accuse me of being on social media. Just here, in person, where you can't ignore it or scroll past it. I'm not ignoring anything, Hoda said tiredly. Trust me, this will be talked about. Good, Valerie said, picking up her purse. Let people talk. Let them dissect it. Let them choose sides. Because at least then we're having a real conversation about how women are treated when they dare to be authentic. At least then, something good can come from this disaster. She started walking toward the edge of the set, her heels clicking against the floor in the sudden silence. Hoda called after her one more time. Valerie, wait. Valerie stopped but didn't turn around immediately. When she did, her expression was guarded. What? I didn't mean for it to go like this, Hoda said, and for the first time, she sounded genuine, uncertain, even. I really didn't. Valerie studied her for a long moment. Maybe you didn't, but it did. And that matters more than your intentions. Can we start over? Hoda asked. Can we try this again? No, Valerie said simply. We can't. Because the problem isn't the questions you asked. It's the assumptions behind them. It's the belief that you had the right to question my choices in the first place. And starting over doesn't change that. With that, Valerie Bertinelli walked off the Today Show set, leaving Hoda Kotb sitting alone, the cameras still rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath. The interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance had turned into something else entirely. Something that would be replayed, analyzed, and debated for days to come. So there you have it. One of the most explosive moments in daytime television history, a moment where two women, both successful, both strong, both with their own perspectives, clashed in a way that nobody saw coming. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below. Do you think Valerie was right to walk off, or should she have stayed and finished the interview? Let me know what you think.